Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. I enjoy seeing where our viewers are from, so I would like to invite you to post the flag of your nation, state, or province in the comments section of this video. Today's episode takes us to the small town of Island Park, Idaho. The geography of this area is rolling hills covered in dense stands of pine, fir, and spruce trees, split by undulating waves of grasses and sagebrush. The elevation here is over 7,000 feet, and the winters are extremely cold with frequent accumulations of snow. The summers are nearly always hot and dry, creating a season of feast and famine for all animals in the area. There are plenty of berry bushes here, and along any given body of water you will see dense pockets of willow. Yellowstone National Park is only a stone's throw away, so there's always a constant ebbing and flowing of moose, deer, and elk based on seasonal demand. The predators of this area are a murderer's row of deadly and cunning carnivores. Wolves, cougars, coyotes, and bobcats, along with black bears, are seen regularly, but the most dangerous of predators, the grizzlies, are much more elusive and stealthy than the others. Island Park is located near Henry's Fork, which is a tributary of the Snake River. It is a world-class fly fishing destination for the beautiful rainbow trout that populate the streams here. The Continental Divide is a few miles north of the town and divides the waters flowing west into the Columbia River system and the east flowing into the Mississippi River system. This very rugged and remote area is a hotbed of grizzly and human conflicts, which are beginning to come to a head. In the early morning hours of Thursday, September 23, 2021, two archery hunters, whom we will call Tom and Don, were pursuing elk near Stamp Meadows. The heavily timbered hills give way to broad meadows of grass, on which bull elk strut to put on a show to attract cows who are ready to breed. Elk are grazers, which means they eat grass, as opposed to being browsers like deer and moose. Browsers dine on the shoots, leaves, and stems of various bushes and trees. The growth of grasses in Stamp Meadows make it a prime habitat for elk during a time of year that is demanding for them. As Tom and Don stalked their way along the edge of the meadow, they kept a wary eye out for grizzly bear sign. Tracks are far too common in this area, so seeing them isn't necessarily proof of a grizzly being in the immediate area. Given the bear's tendency to travel many miles in a given day, once you see a track, even if it's fresh, it isn't always correct to assume the grizzly is still nearby. Other forms of evidence of grizzly bear activity, like seeing stumps torn apart or anthills that have been dug up along with the grizzly bear tracks nearby, are a harbinger that grizzlies regularly seek food in this area. When they find a reliable location for food, grizzlies are known to frequently return on a regular pattern in search of more. As the archery hunters paralleled the tree line, they unknowingly walked within several yards of a hungry and very territorial sow grizzly bear, who took defending her cubs from any perceived threat very seriously. Don was armed with a 10mm semi-automatic pistol, and Tom carried a primed can of bear spray for protection. As the hunters encroached on the sow's hiding spot, which was a thick stand of low-growing jackpines, she sprang upon the men in a lightning-quick ambush. The sow emerged from cover only a few yards from the hunters and quickly closed the short distance in what seemed like an instant. Even though both men were completely surprised by the ambush, the knowledge of being in grizzly bear territory had them mentally prepared to defend themselves. Don immediately reached his hand toward his pistol, while Tom wrapped his hands around his bear spray canister. By the time the sow had approached to within 10 yards, Don began firing his pistol. As he heard his partner's shots ring out, Tom flicked the safety cap from the top of his bear spray canister and let loose that hellish orange cloud of billowing burning. As the sow was impacted by the bullets of Don's pistol, she was likely momentarily confused by the presence of two targets. The fact that bear spray was correctly dispensed didn't help her cause, as the noxious cloud began to irritate her eyes and nose. Her lungs filled with the burning concoction, and her breathing was replaced with coughs and gagging. Had the temperatures been lower, the propellant qualities of the bear spray canister would likely have rendered the irritant non-functional and ineffective. Don's accuracy must have been lethal, because the bullets fired from his pistol took their toll on the sow. After having several 10mm sized holes punched through vital areas of her anatomy, the sow breathed her last and gave up her grizzly ghost. As the pistol shots stopped echoing through the valley, Dawn and Tom could see 2 grizzly bear cubs scampering through the brush. Now without their mother and sole protector, they did the only thing they knew to do, and bolted for cover. The cubs' mother had taught them well in her brief time with them, but now, without her, their future would be bleak, if not unsustainable. Tom and Dawn knew that the events that had transpired would be analyzed, critiqued, and questioned by well-intending state and federal investigators. It was a good thing for the archery hunters that the terrain in this area was rolling as opposed to being steep. This allowed them to reach out to game wardens via their cell phones and request that they hear the details of the run-in with the sow and her cubs. Wardens from the Idaho Fish and Game arrived on the scene around 8:30 a.m., immediately followed by federal wardens. Tom and Dawn explained the details of the incident and made sure to pass on that the sow's 2 cubs were still out there. During their investigation of the archery hunters' claims pertaining to the attack, federal and state agencies clearly acknowledged that this grizzly sow was killed in self-defense. They also initiated a broad and comprehensive search for the orphaned cubs. The fact that the government wardens initiated a search is proof that the cubs must have been born this past spring. If they were from the prior spring, it would have been assumed that they may have been able to make it through the winter on their own, and likely too wary of humans to be easily caught. If they were found before a boar grizz found them, they could be safely captured and transported to the Island Park Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center. Orphan grizzly cubs are raised in safe and secure enclosures at this facility and serve as a real-life example for visitors to learn about grizzlies. Although the search didn't find the cubs, the investigation found that Dawn and Tom did not violate any state or national laws. They were found to have acted solely in self-defense and were not charged with any crimes, nor were they cited for any violations. Tom and Dawn's grizzly attack is not the only incident in Stamp's Meadows between grizzlies and humans in recent years. On July 9, 2021, a trail runner from Maryland was jogging when he ran into a sow and her cub. She knocked him to the ground and bit him several times before dashing back into the brush with her cub. The runner sought and received medical help from Madison Memorial Hospital in nearby Rexburg, Idaho. Later that same month, a man was mountain biking past Stamp Meadows. As he sped down the trail, a sow grizzly and her cub charged at him as he passed a clump of brush. Fortunately, he was going too fast for the bears to catch up with him, and he got away without an injury. As a follow-up to the previously mentioned confrontations, on the evening of September 1, 2023, 2 archery hunters were sneaking through the dense brush just west of Island Park Reservoir. Both of the bow hunters were armed with pistols and managed to pull them out before a giant grizzly boar could close the distance between them. They fired several shots into the massive mauler and introduced him to his angels before he could harm either of them. They called into the Fremont County Dispatch to file a report relaying the facts surrounding their altercation with the big and angry grizz. Following the thorough investigation, the archery hunters were found to have acted in self-defense and were not charged with any infractions. If you remember a few episodes prior to this one, I mentioned that both of my teenage sons drew bull moose tags in the hunting unit that includes Island Park. I commented on how we'd seen no moose, bulls or cows, in over 3 weeks of hunting in 3 different months. We did, however, see a multitude of grizzly bear tracks, and even followed a grizzly bear from an uncomfortable distance of only 150 yards for over 20 minutes. I mention this because it is apparent through my own experiences in this area that not only are the grizzlies here aggressive toward people, but they're currently overburdening their habitat's carrying capacity. When a visitor can find grizzly bears roaming between 2 highways in broad daylight, the way my sons and I did, then they are clearly being mismanaged. This trend line can only lead to more attacks and deaths on both sides of each species. After reviewing the short list of incidents involving hostile grizzlies and human beings, it is clear that the aggressive grizzly bears near Island Park, Idaho, take exception to the presence of people being near their cubs, food caches, and their territory more than any other grizzly population in the world. What could possibly be making this population of grizzlies so defensive or offensive to human presence? After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I have a few questions for you. Do you think there is an environmental factor that causes grizzlies around Island Park to be more hostile toward the presence of humans? If salmon migrations were reestablished, would this reduce human and grizzly confrontations? Is the lack of management, including hunting seasons or hazing seasons, creating an untenable and dangerous situation around Island Park, Idaho? Would you consider it worth the risk to catch a giant rainbow trout in the Henry's Fork and possibly be attacked by a grizzly who didn't appreciate your penchant for fly fishing? I will enjoy reading and responding to your thoughts, so please post them in the comment section below and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Beatty Gulch near Gardner, Montana. This area is a high wooded plateau that slopes up to the west, rising to over 7,500 feet in elevation. Beatty Gulch has pine, fir, and spruce trees scattered across a broad slope with a steep brushy gully along the creek. Visibility is good in most places here, as the trees are far apart and the ground is covered with grass and sagebrush for the most part. Yellowstone National Park borders the gulch just a few hundred yards to the south. It is prime grizzly bear habitat that offers elk, white-tailed deer, and moose for prey. Other predators in this area include cougars, wolves, coyotes, bobcats, and black bears. Many of Montana's residents are frequent hunters, and accessing the border around Yellowstone National Park is a key place to find animals. Deer, moose, and elk leave the safety and security of the park and wander in search of mates or food across its boundaries and into adjoining hunting units. This allows hunters who are aware of the park boundaries the opportunity to harvest game animals and fill their freezers with delicious elk, moose, and deer meat. Wildlife agencies indicate that there are 2,100 grizzly bears in western Montana, with the majority of those bears living in or near Glacier National Park in the northwest portion of the state. This leaves around 1,000 grizzlies broadly distributed over the rest of the state. Population densities of grizzly bears here average 1 bear for every 25 square miles. This may not seem very high, but given the amount of room and resources grizzlies require for their existence, the bears are in a state of overpopulation in ecosystems that support them. Grizzlies in this area used to have an abundant source of fat and nutrients delivered to any body of water in their habitat. Seasonal salmon runs would provide valued nourishment to the entire ecosystem and help the bears grow fat for hibernation. In the late 1940s, the construction of dams, the presence of pollution, and overfishing caused seasonal salmon runs to stop altogether. Since the 1980s, salmon reintroduction efforts have been met with a limited amount of success, but may never be restored to their previous levels, which supported bear populations. The absence of salmon has forced bears to find alternate sources of calories, which they defend aggressively from any intruder. On Tuesday, September 26, 2023, a hunter whom we will call Nick was pursuing game in Beatty Gulch. Game animals are plentiful here, and sign of their presence covers the landscape as they move to find food and mates. Nick was aware the grizzlies were in the area in which he was hunting. He continually searched for signs of bear activity, such as scat or torn-up stumps. He had no way of anticipating the frightening and dangerous events that would unfold on this fateful day. As Nick hiked along the relatively clear slope of the gulch, he kept his eyes up and scanned for the flick of an ear or the telltale yellow and white patch on their rumps. He eagerly hoped for a nice trophy animal with a big body to materialize before his eyes. They are like ghosts here and can appear and disappear seemingly at whim, and finding them is frequently a pleasant surprise. Just as Nick rounded a small rise in the slope of the gulch, a large brown mass appeared just a short distance away. At first glance, it appeared to be a stump from a long-dead tree, but then it moved. Right before Nick's eyes, the stump grew a large head, revealing the distinct profile of a grizzly bear. Its dish-shaped face and huge hump of muscle on its shoulders proved to be the most ominous signs of the one animal Nick did not want to run into during his hunt. As soon as the bear lifted its head, it looked right at Nick. The bear immediately began charging toward the hunter. Nick's heart sank as he knew this was no bluff charge. He could see a large mound of sticks and dirt scraped up behind the bear as it bore down on him. He knew he had to act quickly to keep himself from harm and possibly save his own life. Nick yelled at the bear and quickly raised his hunting rifle to his shoulder. He prepared for the worst and clicked off the safety. The bear was closing in on him from less than 50 yards, and he didn't have a lot of time to react. As he watched the bear flowing toward him, he could see its fur bounce with each bound and muscles ripple as they absorbed the energy of each stride. Its head was high and steady as its eyes fixed on Nick's face. By the time the bear closed to within 20 yards, Nick had decided to fire his hunting rifle. He tried to time the pull of the trigger of his hunting rifle with a gentle bouncing of the grizzly's head. Once the sights of his rifle and the bear's head lined up, he pulled the trigger. His body jerked as the rifle roared in reaction to the man's will. The bullet tore its path like a destructive affliction and smashed its way through the bear's skull. As soon as the energy of the bullet overwhelmed the protective structure of the bear's skull, Nick watched the bear's head drop toward the ground. The bear's body tumbled and then skidded to a stop only a few yards from Nick's feet. Nick knew that he had narrowly avoided being maimed by the bear, and that he had to get a hold of authorities to report the details of the incident. They would want to know the circumstances surrounding the bear's death, and would expect his cooperation to fully understand the contributing factors of this incident. The only scars Nick would take away from this run-in with the grizzly would be the nagging questions of alternate outcomes that would wake him up on restless nights. This grizzly was one of 3 bears killed by sportsmen while defending themselves in the outdoors in the month of September in Montana, 2023. This trend is one of the most alarming and concerning issues faced by states that make up grizzly territory. After a thorough investigation, authorities concluded that the portrayal of events presented by Nick was supported by the forensic evidence collected at the attack scene. They also confirmed that the bear was defending a food cache containing an animal it had stashed for consumption. The grizzly was merely acting in defense of a valued and needed resource for its survival, even though the outcome could easily have been profoundly harmful and damaging to Nick's life and health. The evidence showed that there were no cubs observed at the scene, nor was there evidence of them being in the area. There was no cub tracks or orphaned grizzly cubs located in subsequent weeks. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think bear spray may have changed the outcome of this attack? What more could Nick have done to avoid the conflict with this grizzly? Was this bear looking to make a meal out of Nick, or was it simply defending its food cache? What would you do if you were surprised by a charging grizzly in open country? I'll be glad to read your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to a very familiar place if you are a regular viewer of our channel. In our prior episode, we discussed how Island Park, Idaho is home to the most aggressive grizzly bear populations in the world. Its rolling topography is covered in stands of evergreen trees. The high elevation ensures it has dramatic differences in seasons, with cold, snowy winters and hot, dry summers. As I've discussed in the prior episode, the grizzlies around Island Park are not very welcoming to people passing through their area. Stamp Meadows is the location for this episode, as well as being mentioned in our prior one. The common animals here are the numerous elk, deer, and moose, which tend to meander into and out of Yellowstone National Park, which is less than 20 miles from the picturesque meadows. The predators in this area have acclimated to this competitive environment with each other, and somehow sustain themselves and their subsequent generations. Black bears, bobcats, cougars, and coyotes compete directly or indirectly with wolves and grizzly bears, creating a hard-scrabble existence for all of them. On Friday, July 9th, 2021, Tom Whitney was out for a run on the Stamp Meadows Trail. This trail leads along the long and grassy meadow and provides a scenic and serene setting for anyone who appreciates the calming effect that being in the woods offers its visitors. Tom had run this trail many times over the past several years and never had a problem with man or beast. It was kind of his place to escape from stress and worry, and his frequent visits here were therapeutic for him. Tom is the father of 3 little girls, and his family hails from the beautiful state of Maryland. The entire family makes the long trip from back east to Island Park most years. They use this time to bond with each other and relax in what was a wild and beautiful place in which they loved to be. This fateful morning, Tom was jogging along the trail when he noticed an odd, furry-looking patch of something only a few yards off the trail. This strange structure was new, or perhaps he hadn't noticed it before, but wasn't sure how he could have missed such a bizarre-looking item. It was very large and almost looked like some kind of rug that someone had discarded, but who would carry such a large item to this location just to discard it? While Tom stood next to the strange object, it began to move a bit. He watched as a huge grizzly bear's head lifted from the far side of the object. As the grizzly's eyes met Tom's, he knew he'd made the biggest mistake of his life by waiting. The only thing that went through his mind was what he should do next. He knew he couldn't run, as even the largest and most clumsy grizzly bear would run the fastest of men down in only a few strides. Fighting it was off the table, as this thing was huge and Tom was on the small side. He knew he would stand no chance in a physical battle with it. Climbing a tree sounded like a great option, but he was in a meadow. The only trees around him were far apart and too small to provide protection. That left only one option. Tom knew he would have to play dead if the bear decided to attack him. As the grizzly spun toward Tom, he heard the indelible thumps of its paws on the ground as it began thundering toward him. He could hear the brush that separated them snapping and parting as the angry sow barreled through it. Tom scrambled toward some trees and hid behind them to screen the sow's view of him. The reality of the situation soon set in. He knew he couldn't run or hide from one of the most powerful predators in the world. In a deliberate attempt to convey that he was no threat to the sow nor her cub, Tom quickly collapsed into the fetal position, right behind the tree he was hiding behind. Tom placed his arms near his chest and wrapped his hands around his neck and head as best he could. He knew that once he felt the powerful bite from her jaws, this grizzly wouldn't stop venting her anger on him. He braced for the impact, pain, and damage that she would inflict upon him. As the sow closed in on Tom, her cub watched from only a few yards away. In other bear attacks, victims have stated that they could hear the cubs growling or saw them acting out what they witnessed their mother doing during the attack. Tom could see the cub and heard its protective mom sounding a low and rumbling growl as she pounced on him. The angry sow drove her large canine teeth through Tom's flesh on his back, head, and shoulder blades in a blurry attack of flashing teeth. She bit him several times, prompting thoughts to race through Tom's head. He thought to himself that this was a strange way to go. He quietly uttered a prayer as he felt the sow's teeth pinching and pulling at the flesh on his back. As the pain from the bite seared through his body, Tom was suddenly aware that he could no longer hear the sow's angry growls. He could no longer feel her biting into his muscles and skin. She had simply disappeared and mercifully halted her attack on him as quickly as she had initiated it. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, dulling his pain, Tom quickly regained his feet. He thought the bear and her cub went one way, and he was definitely going to go the opposite way. His urgent pace quickly led him back to the paved portion of Stamp Meadow Road as his wounds trickled blood. More than anything, he just wanted to make his way back to the cabin his family was renting to reconnect with them. As Tom walked along the road toward the cabin, a passerby stopped and offered him a ride. After being dropped off, Tom made his way into the cabin and told his family of his recent incident. They called 911, and the dispatch operator listened to Tom's description of his injuries and sent out first responders who examined the bite wounds the bear had inflicted on him. They were certainly not life-threatening, barring any infection from the bacteria commonly found in the mouths of bears. Tom was advised to go by the Madison Memorial Hospital to receive medical attention as soon as possible. Once Tom arrived at the hospital, the medical team there cleaned and dressed multiple puncture wounds on his back, shoulders, and head. The grizzly bear's claws had opened up a few gashes here and there, and he was clearly bruised along his entire back. The pictures of his wounds are posted on my Patreon link, which is posted below. Photos this graphic would not pass YouTube standards, so they were not included in this video. Tom's photos are not the worst I've seen, but still show the damage a single angry bear can inflict on a human being in only a matter of seconds. Following the run-in with the angry mama bear, Tom inquired as to what the Idaho Fish and Game had planned to do with her and her cub. He was relieved to know that the agency had no plans on trapping or killing the sow, as her actions were deemed to be exclusively defensive in nature. The damage she had done to Tom's body could have been much worse, and she immediately fled the area with her cub in tow, showing that she did not see him as a food source. Tom succinctly summed up his thoughts about the run-in by stating that he has always loved grizzlies. He states that they were here first, and we are infringing on their environment when we go into the forest. Tom also states that following his attack, he feels some kind of spiritual connection with the grizzly. He says he feels fortunate that his injuries could have been much worse than they were. The National Park Service states that there are approximately 728 grizzly bears living in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which overflows the park boundaries by about 20 miles in each direction. This population density marks a dramatic increase from the bear census of 1975, in which grizzly populations were estimated to be 136 bears. Given that salmon runs have not been restored and habitat has been lost to development, grizzlies are facing stressors that prior bear populations have not. A dramatic increase in people visiting the backcountry adds to the mix and makes observers question how to navigate such complicated demands. Grizzly bears by nature and instinct are aggressive, violent, and overwhelming in their application of force when required. They're not likely to change the way they survive, which relies on them reacting to perceived threats, finding reliable and abundant food, and protecting their young and resources. Answers to unknown questions are hard to come by, but ensuring that grizzlies can survive has a value that we have yet to fully understand. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I have a few questions for you. Why on earth did Tom stop to investigate a furry patch of grizzly-colored materials while on his run? Given the proximity of the two, why was the bear so easy on Tom when she attacked him? Do you think the cub observed behavior that could lead it to conflict with people in the future? The next time you're in the forest and you see a dark-colored stump, will you take a second glance just to make sure it isn't a grizzly? I will enjoy reading and replying to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.